got him out of the car seat. And I laid him down and so I could get his diapers ready. And somebody said, hola, and that's all I remember.
That is the mother of Emmanuel Haro crying and narrating the story of his kidnap. A story the police say does not make sense. She claimed she was enchanted and Emmanuel kidnapped. But there were security cameras around 7 months old. She was going to change his diapers. But that was the last thing she remembered. Emmanuel snatched in broad daylight with no other witness to support this claim, really? Now no security camera around the Big 5 strip mall shows any sign of the said abduction. The mother, Rebecca Haro, also has a shinny, at which she claims not to know what happened to her. When police deepened their investigation and demanded more clarity from both parents, they withdrew their cooperation and even hired a lawyer.
I was gonna get the diaper and somebody said hola, and I didn't see nothing since. I woke up right here on the floor and I didn't see Emmanuel.
Why would a parent committed to finding their 7-month son refuse to cooperate with law enforcement and even hire a lawyer? The story gripped an entire community, sparked helicopter searches, K-9 units, cadaver dogs, and a reward for his safe return. But the nightmare wasn't outside. It was inside his own home. Because while the world searched for a phantom kidnapper, investigators discovered the father's past. Jake Haro, a man already convicted of brutal child cruelty in 2023. His infant daughter, Promise, was left permanently disabled from the abuse. Doctors said she would live with the scars forever. And yet, somehow, Jake was back at home, this time with Emmanuel. Now ask yourself, if a man once shattered the body of one baby, what chance did another baby in his care ever have? Within days, Rebecca's kidnapping tale crumbled under questioning. Inconsistencies piled up. Her tears looked more like performance than grief. And then the silence. Both parents stopped talking. No pleas, no answers, no desperation to save their son. By August 22nd, SWAT teams descended on their Cabazon home. Armored vehicles in the street, helicopters in the air, forensics tearing the house apart, phones, cars, computers seized, and then the sight that froze neighbors in place. Jake and Rebecca Haro, arrested on suspicion of murder, paraded out in handcuffs. But through it all, one devastating truth remained. Baby Emmanuel was still missing, and the gossip turned venomous. For the Haros, hiding his body? Was Emmanuel already gone when his mother staged her kidnapping? How many chances should a man with a history of harming children ever have had? This is not just the story of a missing child. It's a story of a father with a violent past, a mother spinning a web of deceit, and a baby who vanished in the shadow of his parents' darkest secrets. So sit tight, because once you hear how this all unfolded, you'll be left asking the same chilling question everyone is screaming tonight. Where is Emmanuel Haro?
Whoever took our son, please give him back.
7 months. That's how long baby Emmanuel Haro had been in this world before he disappeared. A tiny boy, barely able to crawl, suddenly gone. It was August 14th, 2025 in Yucaipa, California, when his mother, Rebecca Haro, dialed the police with a story so shocking that it immediately lit up phones, newsrooms, and neighborhood gossip circles. She claimed she had been attacked. In the parking lot of a Big 5 sporting goods store, she said. She was changing her baby's diaper when a man walked up. Just one word left his lips, hola. And then, according to her, everything went black. She said she was struck unconscious. And when she came to, her baby, little Emmanuel, was gone. Now, pause here. Let's gossip for a moment. Does that story make sense to you? A mother in a public parking lot. A stranger greeting her casually, before instantly attacking her and vanishing with the baby? Broad daylight. Cars around. Security cameras everywhere. No screams. No warning. No one else seeing a thing. Doesn't it feel more like the plot of a telenovela than real life? But that's the story Rebecca gave. And the second those words were spoken, police jumped into action. Because whether or not the story made sense, a 7-month-old was missing. Picture the scene. Officers racing to the store. Shoppers whispering, a baby's been kidnapped. Employees rushing to pull up surveillance tapes. Mothers clutching their children tighter in the parking lot. And across town, phones buzzing. Did you hear about the baby? They say someone took him from his mom. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department treated it as a nightmare it sounded like. A possible child abduction in progress. And the urgency? Off the charts. No time was wasted. Law enforcement launched an enormous search operation. Helicopters scoured the skies, cameras scanning rooftops, alleys, and desert edges. 9 units swept through the Big 5 parking lot, sniffing for any trail of baby Emmanuel. Cadaver dogs were brought in almost immediately. Dogs trained not for rescuing, but for recovering bodies. And here's where the whisper started. Why cadaver dogs so soon? Did investigators suspect something darker already? Ground officers spread out through nearby neighborhoods, fields, and shopping centers. And the gossip on the ground? People were already asking each other, how does a baby vanish so quickly? Why would a kidnapper target a mother in a public place in broad daylight? Still, the search pressed on. Emmanuel's picture was circulated widely, dark hair, round cheeks. A little boy who should have been cradled safely at home. Detectives turned to the most obvious source of answers, cameras. The Big 5 parking lot had surveillance. So did neighboring businesses. This wasn't a deserted country road. It was a store in Yucaipa, a place with people moving in and out all day long. But as hours turned into a full day of reviewing footage, the result was disturbing. No man, no kidnapping, no hola. Think about that. If Rebecca's story was true, someone had just pulled off the boldest daylight child abduction in years, with not one piece of footage, not one eyewitness. Doesn't that sound almost impossible? Yet officially, at this point in time, it was still being treated as a kidnapping. The gossip, though, it was already starting to shift. While detectives tore apart the scene, imagine the emotional chaos spreading like wildfire. Parents across San Bernardino County began saying, that could have been my baby. Shoppers hesitated to run errands. Neighborhood groups blasted out safety alerts. 7 months old. 7 months. Just learning to recognize faces. Just starting to reach for toys. People couldn't stop picturing Emmanuel's tiny body in the arms of a stranger, carried off into God knows where. And here's the gut punch. What chance does a baby that age have if really snatched from his mother's arms? He can't talk. He can't walk. He can't resist. The thought alone was enough to drive people mad with fear. At this stage, Rebecca still had the community's sympathy. People wanted to believe her. After all, she was a mother, wasn't she? Who would make up a story like that about their own child. The Uvalde Foundation for Kids, a child advocacy group, even stepped in, posting a $5,000 reward for Emmanuel's safe return. Flyers circulated. Social media filled with Emmanuel's picture. The hashtag started. The prayers rolled in. Bring baby Emmanuel home. Find our boy. Justice for the Haro family. It was emotional, it was loud, and it was desperate. But behind the scenes, detectives were finding more questions than answers. Why wasn't there video of the man Rebecca described? Why did cadaver dogs hit certain areas but produce nothing conclusive? Why did the story itself feel off? Of course, none of that was said out loud yet. Not to the public, not to the media. But you can bet those whispers were already circling inside the sheriff's department, inside the newsrooms, and inside the gossip mill of Yucaipa. By the end of that first night, Emmanuel was still missing. Helicopters had burned fuel. Dogs had sniffed every inch of dirt. Detectives had combed through footage frame by frame, and still nothing. A baby gone. A mother claiming she was attacked. A father at home. And no physical trace to back up the tale. And here's the part that gnawed at everyone's mind. How does a 7-month-old vanish without a witness, without a sound, without a clue? The more people thought about it, the stranger it seemed. Mothers in Facebook groups asked each other, could someone really knock her out so fast? Fathers asked. Why target her out of all the women in that parking lot? Kids whispered. Did the man hide in the store? Did he have a car waiting? Questions, questions, and more questions. But answers? None. A baby boy 7 months old missing. A mother with a story that sounded like a nightmare script. A father in the background, silent for now. Police pulling out every tool in their arsenal, canines, helicopters, cadaver dogs, cameras, and coming back with empty hands. A community clinging to hope, rallying around the Haros with prayers and reward money. But underneath it all, one thing is undeniable. The cracks were already there. The questions were too loud to ignore. The whispers were too strong. So as the gossip built and the public watched, everyone asked the same thing. Where is baby Emmanuel? And the answer, chillingly, would not be found in a parking lot. At first, the story was simple. A mother attacked, a baby kidnapped. The community prayed, shared flyers, and believed. But within days, everything changed. The neat little tale Rebecca spun for detectives started to come apart, thread by thread, until it collapsed into something far more sinister. And the way it happened? It wasn't with one big revelation. It was the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the small details that didn't line up when Rebecca was asked the same questions again and again. Detectives are trained to spot lies, and Rebecca's words began to wobble. At first, she insisted she was struck unconscious in the Big 5 parking lot. But then, her timeline shifted. The length of time she claimed to be out didn't match. The way she described the man changed. Even the act of being knocked unconscious became murky. Let's ask the obvious. Have you ever fainted or been knocked out? It's chaotic, confusing, yes, but you don't forget the basic sequence. You don't misplace minutes. You don't swap details, especially when your baby's life depends on it. And yet, that's exactly what happened with Rebecca. Detectives noted her discomfort, her inability to hold eye contact, the way her tone shifted. Under pressure. She wasn't the grieving mother begging for help. She was the storyteller who couldn't keep her script straight. So what do you think? Was it grief? Trauma? Or was it guilt leaking out through every cracked word? When the questioning intensified, something even more damning happened. Rebecca stopped cooperating. No more long interviews. No more retracing her steps. Just silence. And Jake? He followed her lead. Instead of standing by police, instead of pleading with the public, instead of shouting his son's name across every television camera, he clammed up. Now, let's gossip about that. If your 7-month-old child is missing, would you ever stop talking? Would you ever stop fighting? Or would you camp out at the sheriff's office until someone brought you answers? But Jake and Rebecca, they folded into silence. And silence in cases like these is louder than any scream. Behind closed doors, detectives were already whispering. This wasn't a kidnapping. The search had produced no evidence of a stranger. The footage showed no abductor. The dogs found no trail. The cadaver units didn't confirm death, but their early deployment spoke volumes. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Law enforcement declared there was no kidnapping. Think about that moment. The public, who had spent days praying for a kidnapped baby, was suddenly told, no one took Emmanuel. So if no one took him, what happened? And here's the chilling part. The answer pointed back, not outward. Back to the very people who should have been protecting him. Back to Jake and Rebecca Haro. If suspicion wasn't bad enough, another piece of the puzzle made it even darker. The father, Jake Haro, wasn't some random name. He had a record. A disturbing one. In 2023, Jake was convicted of willful child cruelty involving his infant daughter, Promise. The injuries were so severe, they left her with lifelong impairments. The kind of abuse that permanently scars a child, physically and emotionally. Now, tell me, should a man with that kind of history have ever been trusted around another baby? Shouldn't the system have protected Emmanuel from day one? When that past surfaced, the gossip exploded. If he could do it once, people whispered. Why not again? The case wasn't just about Emmanuel anymore. It was about a father with a pattern, a history, and a mother willing to stand beside him. At first, The Haros had sympathy. People cried for them, raised money, printed Emmanuel's face on flyers. But when the cracks widened, sympathy soured into suspicion. Neighbors began to murmur. Where are the tears? Where are the pleas? Friends stopped showing up. Strangers started showing up, not to comfort, but to question. Even the Uvalde Foundation for Kids, which had offered a $5,000 reward for Emmanuel's return, pulled back. They withdrew their support, no longer convinced the Haros story deserved it. Imagine how humiliating that must have been. Your child is missing, and even the charity that once stood by you walks away. Why? Because the pieces didn't add up. The gossip was no longer whispers. It was chants, questions, accusations. And the one line everyone repeated was the harshest of all. If no one kidnapped Emmanuel, then his parents know where he is. Now stop and think about this. We aren't talking about a distant suspect, some faceless man hiding in the shadows. We're talking about the baby's own parents. How does a mother look into cameras and cry kidnapped if it isn't true? How does a father sit silently while his child vanishes under suspicious circumstances? And deeper still, how does a community handle that betrayal? At first, people pitied Rebecca. They pitied Jake. They prayed. But now pity was replaced with anger. The gossip hardened into rage. Mothers in town whispered, I would never lie about my child. Fathers muttered, if they did something, they should pay. Children asked, where's the baby? And no one, not Rebecca, not Jake, had an answer. By the end of this turning point, the case had shifted entirely. No longer was it about a hunt for a stranger. No longer was it about a parking lot or a phantom hola. It was about two parents under spotlight. Police were circling closer. Detectives weren't asking if the Haros knew more. They were asking how much and how soon they could prove it. And the community? They were watching, waiting, whispering, and ready to explode. Because the one question hanging in the air was this. If Emmanuel wasn't kidnapped, then what really happened to him? By August 22nd, 2025, the whispers had grown too loud. The detectives had the evidence they needed. And the community? They were no longer praying. They were demanding. That morning, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department moved in with force. Picture it. Quiet Cabazon, a desert town where neighbors know when you bought a new car or planted a new tree. Suddenly, that stillness was shattered by the roar of helicopters, the crack of boots on pavement, and the sight of armored vehicles rolling down a suburban street. SWAT teams, dressed head to toe in tactical gear, stormed the Haro property. Forensic vans lined the curb. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Phones pressed to glass, recording every second. This wasn't a routine check. This was a full-blown raid. Inside, officers executed search warrants with precision. They tore through rooms, bagged evidence, snapped photos. Outside, detectives seized the couple's car, a crucial piece in the puzzle. Even their phones, laptops, and electronic devices were hauled away. Let's ask the hard question. What did investigators expect to find in those devices? Pictures? Messages? A confession typed late at night? Evidence of a cover-up? Whatever it was, law enforcement wasn't leaving anything behind. And then the bombshell. Rebecca Haro, 41. Jake Haro, 32. Arrested. The charge? Suspicion of murder. No more sympathy. No more kidnapped baby. The very people who cried help just a week earlier were now being let out in handcuffs, booked into jail, and held without bail. Neighbors gasped. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions that went unanswered. Where's Emmanuel? Did you kill your baby? Why lie about a kidnapping? But the Haros said nothing. Not one word. Not one denial. Not one plea. And here's the emotional stab. A mother and father arrested for murdering their own son, while the child's body was nowhere to be found. How do you process that?